In this video, I'm going to talk about how a lot of our learning begins with questions that we have. And those inquiry questions can be the stuff of our online compositions. A couple of tools that we'll use in particular will be Google News and Google Reader. And the blogging platform we're using is Youth Voices. That can be found at youthvoices.net. I think what guides a lot of our learning are questions that we have. Questions that we have about the world, about our communities, and about ourselves. So, as you do online writing, think about coming up with legitimate questions that you have, and then going about finding answers for those, and then posting those answers into a space like Youth Voices so that others can maybe learn from you and perhaps help you find further answers about your questions. So this is inquiry education, and that's one of the kinds of writing we'll do in here on Youth Voices. Here's a look at my inquiry questions here. For instance, I teach English, so I often think about, is there still a place for books in the curriculum? We do a lot of digital writing and reading, but there's also this technology called book that's been around for a long time and that's still really valuable. And so I spend some time thinking about how classics can be updated, how those stories and the wisdom from the old can actually inform us now. And so you see, I have a question. I still think there's a place for books in the curriculum. What's new about the classics is a inquiry question I have. So I'm going to go about talking about how I might try to find answers to that question. My inquiry questions, they may not be your inquiry questions, and your inquiry questions may not be the kinds of things that I'm interested in either. But the point is that a lot of the writing we do and a lot of learning that we do comes from the kind of things that really we're genuinely curious about. So I have students write down 10 questions they have about their world, their communities, and themselves. And then I try to have them turn those things into keywords. So basically, the nouns in your questions are essentially your keywords. And so now what I'm going to do is talk about how to find relevant recent information about those inquiry questions that we have using keywords, which are the nouns from the sentences that we have in our questions. So if I go to Google Reader right now, I've got some questions I have, or a news feed that I've constructed about Prince Hal from Henry IV Part 1. I'm going to be teaching that play coming up. And so I want to know how Prince Hal is relevant still today, because I believe he is, but I'd like to have more evidence to back up that belief. So you can see in my reader that I've got all these things coming in just from this particular question that I have. The general question, how is literature still relevant today? In particular, how is Prince Hal's character still relevant today? So you can see that there's this story that was done last week. Right now it's December 29th, 2008. And December 18th, there was this article done by this NPR writer who makes a reference to Prince Hal in his piece. He's writing about Caroline Kennedy perhaps becoming the senator now that Hillary Clinton is in Barack Obama's cabinet. So in here you'll see that he makes this allusion to Prince Hal. Caroline fits the pattern of late blooming dynastic successors. The classic case in literature is Shakespeare's Prince Hal. These young people apparently want nothing to do with the family business, and yet, when opportunity beckons, they emerge from nowhere to assume its leadership. This is also called hiding your light under a bushel. By lowering expectations, the successor shines more brightly when he finally emerges. So how I construct these feeds are, in my reader I need to have some information streaming in there. So I would go to the thing called the News tab, Google News, and I'm going to type in that search terms. So let's say here's another book I'm going to be teaching, Desert Solitaire, which is a book by Edward Abbey, who's a Utah writer. I live in Utah. And what I want to know is, even though that book was written in the late 60s, I want to know how that book is still relevant today. And if I search the news, I come up with these little references to Desert Solitaire. But what I really want to do is I don't want to have to go through this process every time to get this information. So I'm going to select the URL now, which is the search string, and I'm going to copy it. Then I'm going to paste that into my reader. So I'm going to add a subscription and just paste that in, what I got there. And I hit add. And then what I should see here shortly is the news feed that's coming from Desert Solitaire. So you can see those things are now as part of my reader. So anytime there's a reference to Desert Solitaire in the news, it will come to me through my reader. That seems pretty handy. So here you can see down at the bottom, my Desert Solitaire is now in my reader. But I want to organize things better. So what I want to do is manage my subscriptions. So I'm going to go in here. So now once I'm in my settings of my Google Reader, I noticed that right here, the first one here, Desert Solitaire, which I put in quotes because it's 2 words, and if I just put Desert Solitaire without the quotes, I would get every news feed about Desert and every news feed about Solitaire, the card game. So I just wanted a feed about Desert Solitaire, the book. So that's here. It's not in a folder yet. I like to organize things by folders. So if you don't have folders, you'll see a thing that says new folder, so you can create a folder. But in my case, I want to put it into the folder that's called Lit Classics News. And you see now it's in that folder. So now if I go back to my reader, it should be in my folder now of all my literary classics in the news. And there it is now here. If you look down here, it's now organized in my Lit Classics News folder. So anytime I log into this now, Lit Classics, I kind of keep current on all the things I teach or the things that I teach currently. So that seems pretty handy, a good way to get news feeds into my reader about the kinds of things that I'm curious about. Now, I'm assuming not everybody is interested in literary classics and how they can be made current. So, you know, you probably have folders like, I've got a folder for renewable energy, so if I check that every once in a while, I find the latest stories about, here's a wind farm, and solar energy. Texas remains an untapped resource. So, you know, I have different folders for different inquiry topics that I have, and then those sources of information turn into posts on my blog. Here's an example of a student's post that comes from her inquiry. She's a visual artist, and so she's writing about this artist that she likes, and you notice she's got a link to the artist's website. She's got a link to a location that actually shows this artist's work, and then also to his Flickr gallery. And she's got a link to something from the Best of the Web and that artist's contribution there. So a nice example of including hyperlinks in the text and also linking to quoted material, block quotes that take me to the source itself. Here's an example of a student's post that does a number of things well. Possible oil development near Utah National Parks, and he talks about how in the waning stages of the Bush administration, they've granted some leases that are pretty close to national parks here in Utah, and so you can see that he cites his sources, a little block quote here, He cites the source there, and yet down here another block quote which comes from even a different source. So I think what you want to do is include multiple sources in your posts whenever possible. You want to synthesize information into your own writing. And here's an example of, he says, but for some a picture is worth 1,000 words. He includes a map that actually shows how close some of these leases are to Arches National Park. So he's done a number of things well in this particular post. I think he's included multiple sources. He's included an image that's allowable. And so that would be an example of a good post, because in addition to all those things, he included tags, keywords that describe his inquiry question, which is about the environment and Utah and oil development here in our state.